Tonight, happy Friday. This country right now is at a crossroads. For the past 18 months, our economic output plummeted as COVID put millions of Americans on the couch. When COVID first hit, Washington forced a massive swath of society to stop working, literally forcing their dependence on government. It wasn't political at that point. It was a pandemic. Trump was in the White House, of course. But even still, COVID has created a very dangerous threat to the fabric of this nation. For decades, the Americans led the world as the hardest working society, and we all saw the fruits of our labor. Much of the world lives under the weight of governments that stifle human motivation. Many people live in places where their efforts will never be rewarded, and so their efforts are minimal. Take a trip to most of Africa or Cuba if you want to see for yourself. Self-sufficiency is what drives progress in this world, the idea that working hard leads to a better life. It's very important. The more you work, the better off you'll live. It is the foundation of freedom and capitalism. You chart your own path. When the Democrats won the government last year, we were all reasonably concerned. Socialism, which in America would be a rapid expansion of government control and redistribution of wealth in the hopes of improving quality of life for the poor, is the hot phrase with Democrats. Many of us breathed a sigh of relief when President Biden said this not too long ago.
Communism is a failed system, universally failed system. And I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute.
That was a good statement. We were happy to hear that, to be honest. But this week we've started seeing the impact of the COVID pandemic on the on the way Americans view their government, I should say. As a nation, we are shockingly much more trusting of this massive beast that we have created in Washington, D.C., a beast that has grown out of control and is essentially run by lobbyists and special interests at this point. Suddenly, most Americans seem to think that big government is great, as most in new polling approve of the ridiculous $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, a massive advancement of American socialism through free child care, free pre-K, expansions of Medicare and Medicaid, and free community college. That's what the bill calls for. A major expansion of American entitlements and the federal government's responsibility, and a majority of Americans are in favor of it. And even more shocking, 59%, 56 for the $3.5 trillion, 59% of registered Democrats now have a positive view of socialism in this country. It's a shocking number, and I imagine that soundbite we just played is the last time you're going to hear Joe Biden say much of anything negative about socialism with numbers like that. So what would a transition to socialism do to the world's hardest working and wealthiest country? Well, one of my favorite thinkers is a guy named Charles Murray, who said this: people need self-respect, but self-respect must be earned. It cannot be self-respect if it is not earned, and the only way to earn anything is to achieve it in the face of the possibility of failing. Being even partially reliant on government in perpetuity, on handouts in general, is bad for the human spirit. It just is. We are not meant to live like dogs, waiting for our overlords to feed us every day. In life, the easy way out is easy for a reason. We cannot go that direction. Collectivism leads to collective laziness. When we all work for a common goal and then share everything, you're going to get a lot of people that are just going to ride on the coattails and go along. Capitalism, the engine of self-reliance, leads to prosperity always. Today is the 40th anniversary of President Reagan's Economic Recovery Tax Act, 1981. Reagan inherited an abysmal economy. Listen to his remarks as he pitched his plan to the American people to save it.
I remember telling you we were in the worst economic mess since the Great Depression. Prices were continuing to spiral upward, unemployment was reaching intolerable levels, and all because government was too big and spent too much of our money.
History right now is in the process of repeating itself, it seems. It took a pandemic to fool Americans into supporting ideas that don't work, like collectivism, like socialism. More government and more welfare, of course, begats even more poverty and more welfare. It just does. It's the sad reality. Being the nice guy, playing the nice guy, usually doesn't work. Look at Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty in the 1960s. Government attempts to spend ourselves out of poverty backfired, according to the Heritage Foundation. Since that time, U.S. taxpayers have spent over $22 trillion on anti-poverty programs, 3 times the cost of all U.S. wars since the American Revolution. Now, you would think that kind of spending, $22 trillion, is just, you can't even fathom that amount of money. It should have eradicated poverty forever. And it would be Johnson, and it would if Johnson's plan was effective, but it actually, of course, does just the opposite. It attracts people who otherwise would figure out how to support themselves to just take the free check and sit on the couch. For more on this, we're going to bring in former White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. Sir, good to see you.
Great to see you, Rob.
So some version of this human infrastructure bill is going to get through, it appears. It's got some support. It might be smaller than $3.5 trillion, but essentially the move is we are expanding American entitlements while leaving at the same time the door wide open for illegal immigration, which we cannot be any more foolish than that, can we?
You use the metaphor of a crossroads. I see us more like we've already taken that left turn. We're in a cul-de-sac now. It's really dangerous here. And the thing that alarms me the most is that there were 19 members of the Republican Senate who actually joined hands with the Democrats on a bill which on its face may look popular, but beneath the surface is really dangerous. And then we're going to add to that $3.5 trillion. I'm old enough, Rob, to remember the Reagan years, and before that, the Jimmy Carter years. And when Reagan took office, I think everybody needs to remember we had double-digit mortgage rates and inflation. Energy was out of control. And what Reagan did was come in with a self-reliant message, cut taxes, but he also did a lot of deregulatory efforts. Right. And he basically brought us back to a world more consistent with the American history, legacy, and heritage. I'm living in a world now, Rob, that I've never seen before, and I don't understand. Who are these people who are pushing economic policies which are untethered from any kind of reality or responsibility that are only going to take, I mean, you can see this coming like a freight train at you. It's going to be stagflation. We've talked about it, Rob. There's no question that everything the Biden administration is doing is wrong. I mean, it's hard to be that wrong that often, Rob.
It is. It really, you said it perfectly. It's not tethered to any kind of reality, and yet they continue pushing it. I mean, it reminds me of the people that push modern monetary theory. It's like money, you can just print it and it just works. It's like, how do you not see the flaws in that? I want to listen to a little bit more from Ronald Reagan 40 years ago, back in 1981.
I suggested an across-the-board tax cut spread over those same 3 years and the elimination of unnecessary regulations which were adding billions to the cost of things we buy. All the lobbying, the organized demonstrations, and the cries of protest by those whose way of life depends on maintaining government's wasteful ways were no match for your voices, which were heard loud and clear in these marble halls of government.
That's a great way to put it. He was such a great speaker. You know, right now, a majority of Americans, as we just showed you, are for an expansion of government entitlements and a further road down towards socialism in a lot of ways. What exactly are these people missing?
Let me share again some more history with you, because it wasn't just Ronald Reagan who saved us. It was a guy named Paul Volcker, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And we have kind of the alternative universe Federal Reserve chairman now in Jay Powell, who is aggressively printing money, which is inflationary. And so what Biden's doing is engaging in all manner of irresponsible fiscal spending. He's going to be raising taxes, and Volcker's printing money, right? Historically, in order to break the cycle we were in the 70s, the stagflation cycle, we had to have Paul Volcker come in and dramatically tighten monetary policy at the same time that Reagan went to the tax cuts and adopted a more fiscally responsible fiscal policy. And so, you know, what are these people thinking? That they do not read their history books. Instead of reading critical race theory, why don't you read a little bit about Reagan, Volcker, economic, financial market literacy history? It's like, again, we're going over this cliff untethered from reality, history, and the American legacy. This is not who we are, Rob.
No, it's not. It's a very scary time, and you put that very well. I do want to, before we got to go, I want to switch gears real quick. I want to talk about Afghanistan. It's the big breaking news today.
Yeah.
The Taliban, of course,
Yeah.
taking control of huge swaths of the country. They're saying possibly, the capital could be gone in a month. The president dispatching 3,000 troops trying to evacuate the remaining Americans. What do you make of this situation? I defended actually earlier Biden's move. I said, you know what? I think we do have to get out. If you don't get out now, when do you get out? But there's other Republicans like Dan Crenshaw who say we should just stay there because you can't let it just turn into a haven for terrorism. I don't know what the right move is here.
Well, we had the right move, Rob. Donald Trump had the right move. It was to get out of Afghanistan, but with conditions to let the Taliban know that there would be severe consequences if they went back on what they promised. What we're seeing here, and it's very dangerous because it has implications for China, Taiwan, and well beyond this. The Taliban weighed and measured Joe Biden and found him wanting. So when Biden says withdraw, for a political point, he didn't do what Trump would have done, which was to make sure there were conditions. And now we've got a mess, Rob. We've got an absolute mess. We do. I can't. This guy he's not playing with a full deck, and he doesn't have people behind him in the White House who understand how the world works. And it's unfortunate that you and I have to talk about it, but it's here.
It is.
It's coming at us.
It's a scary time in that country.
China sees it, Rob, and they're going to go right for Taiwan because they think Biden's weak. That's what's next.
All right. Peter Navarro, former White House trade advisor. Always a great conversation. Sir, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you, Rob. Take care.
All right. Coming up, Apple going to start screening your pictures, as it will soon start scanning iPhones and iPads in an effort to protect children against porn, especially child porn. The company says its devices will be updated so that it could compare photos on iCloud against what they call a secret blacklist. And if it finds a hit, then Apple calls the cops. In a recent tweet, former computer intelligence consultant Edward Snowden, you know that name, noted no matter how well-intentioned, Apple is rolling out mass surveillance to the entire world with this. Make no mistake. If they can scan for kiddie porn today, they can scan for anything tomorrow. They turned $1 trillion of devices into iNarcs without asking. This is an interesting subject here. For more on this, let's bring in Robbie Suave. He is the senior editor of Reason magazine. Robbie, good to see you. This is interesting stuff because, nobody wants there to be child porn out there. So obviously this is something we all get behind, is eradicating this as fast as possible. But where does this lead? It's a scary idea.
Yeah, it is a scary idea. I think there are a lot of reasons to be concerned about the privacy implications. Like you said, ridding the internet, ridding the world of child pornography or of sexual imagery targeted at children. Very noble goal, very important cause. But I'm worried the same framework could be used for anything. I think most people don't want, Apple using their tracking system to look through people's pictures, looking for, sexually explicit material. Obviously, some people have sexually explicit photos on their phones that are not, maybe inappropriate. It's not illegal. It's not targeted at children. Yep. But what if they also start looking for, other types of content, just kind of looking for text, things you've said, that kind of thing? And what if the government gets involved? I think this is potentially becoming a policeman in a very worrying sense.
Yeah, the first thing that popped in my head would be like a mom, got the kid in the bathtub, the 3-4-year-old washing the kid in the bathtub, and the dad takes a picture. Oh, it's family, we're washing the kid. Where does the line get drawn? How do they determine what's porn and what's not? And you wonder if there would be mistakes along that line. Apple used to be pretty strict on privacy. The company has stated that it would not create a backdoor that would enable law enforcement to circumvent encryption back in 2016. It refused, of course, demands from the FBI to unlock the iPhone of the shooter of the 2015 San Bernardino terror attack. They used to be all about their privacy, even in a situation where you had a terror attack. It seems like they've changed.
Yeah. I think they have changed. And again, they're a private company, so they can do whatever they can have whatever policy they want. But customers should be aware and should maybe think twice about buying Apple products. Yeah. The other concern I just want to raise too, a lot of what gets considered legally, meets the technical legal definition of child pornography, is consensual sexual imagery sent from 16-year-olds to each other,
right?
Which it's pictures of themselves. And again, it's bad. It's an issue for parents and schools to deal with. It is not an issue in my mind for the criminal justice system to deal with. Those kids should not go to jail for that. They should get detention. Yeah. So the fact that Apple might be looking at that and contacting the police about it, that is very worrisome to me.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue. And you're right. What does Apple have to do with any of that? Just because it's on their devices. They say that they're end-to-end encrypted. These phones are fully encrypted. That's how they make you feel safe about what's on your phone. They say they won't scan photos unless they're uploaded to the iCloud, which is where you store all the stuff. But do you think there are any loopholes to that? Could that somehow turn into them being able to see what's just actually on your phone?
Yeah, it certainly looks like this is getting around encryption, or could be used to get around encryption. They're saying that no specific, employees of Apple will be looking at this, and all sorts of guarantees of privacy. But how many times do we have to have hackers use some backdoor thing nobody thought of and end up with your passwords or all sorts of information or other things they're not supposed to have? Apple's promise is it doesn't do these kinds of things, so it doesn't create these kinds of potential scenarios for abuse. And I think this is a massive betrayal of the reputation they've established on that front.
Yeah, and to that point, it just seems like that this could just open the door. I just imagine a whole office building full of people at their desks being able to look through everything in my phone. And it's just, how do they make people feel comfortable with the idea that there is something that's going to be scanning your stuff and that they have access to all your stuff?
Right. What happens when the government says we want you to use this program to see if people have photos of themselves on their phones of having participated in political events? We want to know who is right. Kind of no. Honestly, they could use that, and those people very foolishly posted on Facebook and other places photos of them trespassing, which were then used against them.
Right.
That's fair game. But if it's just what you have on your phone, that's supposed to be private. That's not supposed to be something that the company hands over to the government.
No. This is a very interesting topic. We're going to see where this goes. Thank you for bringing it to us. Robbie Suave, the senior editor of Reason Magazine. Good to see you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, it's probably one of those.
Hey, thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing the video. We appreciate it.
Of course. So, who put this thing together? Because that's better than a political ad.
Well, thank you for that. We have an enormously talented team with us that put that together. And what we were trying to do is build a brand around American exceptionalism. Free people, free speech, free markets, a bunch of values that, frankly, we feel are a bit under attack. Big tech, people kneeling for the flag at the Olympics, things you talk about all the time. And we think this video does a good job of doing that.
So give us the story of the wine. Where are you guys? You're from California. Tell us about it. All this patriotism coming out of California is kind of confusing.
Well, we are actually based nearby D.C. here in Virginia. However, we do source and make the wine out in California. It's a bit more of a red part of California that we do that. My team and I have gone out and met with fantastic farmers, fantastic vintners over the past 18 months to put together a blend that we think really speaks to the community that we're building, and we certainly see that in the number of people that are joining the wine club and buying the wine, especially over the past couple days since we've dropped the video, and reorders have been strong. So we appreciate everybody that's joined our community so far.
And it's pretty good stuff. What's the price point? Tell us a little bit about the wine. Which blends do you have? All that stuff.
Well, listen, we have a Cabernet Sauvignon and we have a Chardonnay. Price point is around $27 and $29. We're available only online at wethepeople.wine. We encourage everybody to get in and join the wine club to ensure you can get a couple bottles. We're doing everything we can to keep inventory. I got the team out back stomping grapes right now. But demand has obviously been pretty big over the past week, and we expect that to continue. wethepeople.wine.
Yeah.
Please come join what we're trying to build.
Right. Do you think that we're going to, I have thought about exactly what this is a lot lately. This idea that even branding and products could become politicized because the country's so politicized. And it's interesting to watch as so many products align themselves with the left and abandon half the country. And it makes you wonder, God, should you start, like Coca-Cola Should I make a pop soft drink that's for conservatives or something like that? You know, it's just a weird time.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, what we did wine was because we wanted to unify people, not only around the brand, but around the values that we stand for. Again, free speech, free people, things that are being suppressed right now. And what better way to do that than to raise a glass kind of and to we the people.
Yeah.
We think that food and drink is a unifying element of society, and so that's the way we went. And we encourage more brands to, speak more loudly about the values that they stand for.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I told everybody, I put it up on Twitter, the full ad. It's a great ad. It gave me chills. I mean, you guys produced the hell out of that thing. I was very impressed. Ryan Coyne, founder of We the People.
I appreciate it.
Wine. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for the time. Don't seem too concerned about the massive daily super spreader we're having at our border. McAllen, Texas, for example, has received 7,000 COVID-positive migrants since February. In a town of 300,000, 7,000 COVID positive, simply released into the community by the federal government. That's how we're playing this. In Arizona, the Attorney General, Mark Brnovich, sent a scathing letter to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas demanding the Biden administration stop this policy and seal up the border before it gets any worse, as if it really could get any worse. Congressman Dan Bishop joins us tonight to talk about this. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you, Rob. Glad to be with you.
Of course, in the letter to Mayorkas, Brnovich writes, as the Biden administration is ramping up pressure campaigns for COVID-related mandates, this revelation shows incredible hypocrisy and disdain for the health of everyday Americans. What do you make of this and how they're playing this with COVID?
Well, Rob, it's amazing. You talk about letters. I joined one with Chip Roy to ask the administration a lot of detailed questions about what in the world they are thinking.
Right.
So we are now into more than 6 months at this level of more than 180,000 enforcement encounters at the border. As you, I think, said, they expect it to be 210,000 for the month of July. Secretary Mayorkas told me in a hearing at one point that this was seasonal spring immigration or migration. That's false.
Yeah.
He told me this happens every year. That's false. It really, the American people can see it. They've known for several months that it's a real crisis. The leftist media even are beginning to point out that the Biden administration has a crisis on their hands, and they are doing nothing to attenuate the flow. Nothing.
It really is unbelievable. The stupidity of it is so staggering. It's just the way they're handling this, and they just don't seem to care. In the letter, Brnovich also points out the impact that the border crossings are having on the drug problem in this country, which is a whole other section that we don't get to talk about enough. The cartels are creating many diversions for our border agents every day in order to run drugs and gotaways through gaps in the border. It really is something to see that these horrific cartels that are such a stain on the world and society are getting away with murder in this, literally. They're making so much money, and the left ignores a lot of this.
Not only that, Rob, we also, as you said, we have a COVID crisis in the United States. The CDC, Biden, they're inclined to begin ordering Americans. They certainly are ordering us on the Hill to wear masks everywhere. But you have lots of reports of migrants coming through. I saw a figure, I think, of 18% positivity that are being released into the country with COVID positive. You spoke about the drugs. We've had record drug seizures by our great men and women who try to protect us on the border. But with the overwhelmed situation that we've got, that much more is coming through. We had in Alamance County, North Carolina, where there was a shootout with a North Carolina teacher by a member of MS-13 back in April. And rumor is that we're going to start seeing the influx of these folks who are sent into the country from the border showing up in our schools coming up in just a little while.
It's scary stuff. And we're going to show you now some new photos this week of a Donna, Texas facility packed with people wearing masks, lying shoulder to shoulder on small mats and cots. Some are using foil blankets, others sitting nearby in the benched seating areas. You're seeing this absolutely, the system down there just absolutely break apart. It is completely overloaded, and the people that have to work on this, the people that are being set up to fail by our administration, are starting to take pictures and put it out there to show everybody just how ridiculous it's gotten. What are your reaction when you see pictures like that?
You know, Rob, I was down there at the beginning of April. And another thing the administration told us at that time was that the Trump administration was to blame. They had broken down the ability to manage and the pipeline to bring these immigrants through. And so they were going to fix it. And they've told us they've had great success. Well, you're showing me pictures very much like what I saw back in April. Yeah. It is a continued deluge, and they're covered up. They have no control over the situation. They have lost control of the border, and it seems intentional.
Yeah. And nobody's down there crying. Nobody's down there making a big stink about such a disgusting situation as this is overloaded. And, you know, where's all the anger? Where's all the outrage? It's not fashionable now, right? You got a Democrat in the White House, so nobody cares. It really is funny. Your colleague from Arizona, Congressman Andy Biggs, has introduced articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas, saying he has failed to faithfully uphold his oath and has instead presided over a reckless abandonment of border security and immigration enforcement, additionally accusing him of having failed to maintain operational control of the border as required by law. I mean, obviously this, you know, you probably don't have the votes to get anywhere with this, but it's a big moment to make that accusation, your response to it.
You cannot dispute what Congressman Biggs has said in that resolution. They have abandoned their role to faithfully execute the law. There is no argument about it. And so, you know, I think it calls for that. Impeachment's a big step. And as you say, it's not likely that resolution will move forward soon, but it lays a marker down. Yeah. That these folks are going to have to be held accountable for what they are doing purposefully to the United States of America by allowing our border to be completely trampled.
Right. You know, over at CNN, they're running cover for all of this. A recent fact-check article from CNN says public health experts are disputing the notion, instead point to the more transmissible Delta variant and low vaccination rates as a primary cause of this latest wave of COVID, talking about the allegation that migrants are bringing it into the country. Now, clearly, it's very obvious, we're not going to lie, migrants are not the solely responsible for this COVID spike. They're not. Everybody knows that. We get it. But nobody could possibly say with a straight face that the Biden administration is not intentionally importing COVID right now. While it's not the only problem we have with COVID, they're bringing in a problem, they're adding to it, they're exacerbating a problem we already have.
It was exactly my thought as you read the content of that article. No one would suggest that migrants are the only cause, but if the vigilance, we're told the American people have to remain so vigilant, right, that they're thinking about, they're going to mandate soldiers have the vaccine, they're going to mandate all federal employees have the vaccine, going to require everybody to wear masks. They want 56 million school children to wear masks. Why so lax about this obvious source of infection? Obvious, proven, documented source of infection. And it indicates it's just a question of priorities. They will fight COVID to the extent it doesn't get in the way of their ideological priorities. They have an ideological priority to open our border.
Very, very well said there. Absolutely. Congressman Dan Bishop, North Carolina, sir, thank you so much.
Good to be with you, Rob.
All right, so we're going to start off. CNN's Brian Stelter, always a pretty easy target, appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert this week. It had, of course, all the markings of possibly the worst episode of television ever produced, and it did not disappoint. Running defense for his buddy Chris Cuomo, here's the phoniest media reporter in North America, Brian Stelter. Take a listen to this.
Some people are mad at him. By the way, I can confirm the New York Times report. I'll confirm it for your viewers. I also have a source that says Chris was on the phone with his brother this week.
Is your source Chris Cuomo?
He is not. He is not. You got to have boundaries. You got to draw a line.
Why? He doesn't.
I think he does, actually.
Really?
I think Chris does, Governor.
What?
So a pretty sad attempt there, Curtis, to spin the story after it came out that Cuomo was advising his scandal-embroiled governor brother. What do you make of that?
When Stephen Colbert says, oh, that's a little bit of a bridge too far, and actually asks basic questions that one could use the word journalism to describe them, you know something's messed up here. You know, Fredo has lost 41% of his female viewers in the last year, which is an astounding number. Wow. the idea that there's no boundaries or there's no playbook or that we're in uncharted territory with the Cuomo brothers is absolutely laughable for Brian Stelter. Kovac and Rosensteel, elements of journalism. This is like J school stuff that journalists supposedly pay a lot of money to go to. And we're just going to throw that out the window or say that there's no playbook for this kind of situation. Yes, of course there is. It's called conflicts of interest. And clearly, Brian Stelter doesn't have a problem with it because the Cuomos are on his team.
Of course. Yeah. Everybody said, how would you handle this if it happened at a conservative network? And it's a completely different story. I mean, it's like, why have a media reporter if he can't even.